This week's episode is brought to you by Campaign Refinery, an amazing new email marketing automation tool. Look, in the world of digital marketing, there's a lot to keep track of. We all know this. As much as we're in love with social media and the power of social conversation here at Social Inc. and on the All About Digital Marketing podcast, we are well aware at just how powerful email marketing can be. Email marketing is not dead. In fact, it's never been more important to help you leverage your presence everywhere else into the one channel that you'll own, regardless of what changes Facebook, Twitter, or any other platform makes in the future. I've known the founder, Travis Ketchum, for years, and he's been a past guest on the podcast, episode 15 if you want to listen to it. I've personally used his other products before, and they've been fantastic. The amount of thought that he's put into each and every one of what he's created has been incredible. I'd highly encourage you to try their free 14-day trial at campaignrefinery.com to see what world-class email marketing automation can do for you and your business. Massive thank you to Travis and Campaign Refinery for their support of the All About Digital Marketing show. Welcome to the All About Digital Marketing podcast. The show all about
digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing.
Brought to you by Social Inc., a digital marketing agency specializing in social media and content marketing for brave brands and forward-thinking SMEs. I'm your host, Chris Bruno, and as always, we're here to bring you the most actionable tips, tricks, tools, and insights to help you achieve more when it comes to your digital marketing. Subscribe to the show and be sure to share with a friend if you found something useful or interesting. You can find all the show notes and more information on www.allaboutdigitalmarketing.co.uk. Hey everybody. Today's episode is very different. It's not my usual conversation one-on-one with a marketer or somebody within a marketing company. However, Nicole's got some interesting views and interesting points. Nicole Russin-McFarland is a Los Angeles-based composer and director for films. She's incredibly creative, very, very passionate, and she's definitely driven to try and make her goals a reality. The one thing I want to focus on from this episode, though, is the personal branding side, the content creation side, what it takes to constantly create content at scale for a very high quality audience. I hope you enjoy the show. Like I said, it's very different to what it usually would be, but I think you'll still get some great nuggets from the show and you'll still get some great points and tips from Nicole. Enjoy. Nicole, thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast.
Hello.
I'm actually really excited about this because this is very different to a lot of the guests that we've spoken to who are digital marketers or who are working in some form of SaaS product or platform that helps marketers. You, on the other hand, have a very, very different story to tell. And I'm really looking forward to getting into this. So for everybody who hasn't met you yet or that doesn't know anything about you, can you give them the little elevator pitch or the introduction to yourself?
I'm a film director and film score composer who wants to be a combination of Peter Jackson and Hans Zimmer working at a blockbuster level with live action animation and Oscar movies.
Okay, so that's a big ambition.
Yeah.
So how did you get started in the film industry or, composing for film scores and things like that?
I hired myself because people were not hiring me. I had a film director when I was 20 take my theme that I sent from a basic kind of piano recording. And I just didn't want to deal with that again. So I didn't really have opportunities. So I just hired myself and made very small budget work.
What does that mean by hire yourself? You created your own film?
Yeah,
and
I created my own work. And I just had to learn about animation. I still learn about animation. It's not like I know everything, but I just began doing it. And it's a process. And I didn't like some of my initial works. I just redid it and felt I could do better or make it more artistic, improve upon it. And so really the first thing I did was I released Pizza Delivery. It was not the first film I started working on, ironically. It's just that I wanted to improve it and different things. And it's a short film that looks like a 1970s film strip people had in health class. And it's not about that. It just has that look like a junky film strip. And it's about a snake eating pizza and it steals a pizza in Framlingham, England.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one that definitely to go into the show notes. You'll have to send me the link to that afterwards.
Oh yeah, I have a YouTube channel where I put all my shorts, and I'm going to put my 2 animated features on it. Hopefully this year, but plans get in the way.
That's fair
Sometimes
enough.
things take longer than you anticipate. So
I think they invariably take longer than you anticipate. No matter how much I plan for something to take X amount of time, it usually pretty much always goes over. So talk to me a little bit then about yourself from a branding point of view, because I've seen different channels and I've seen all the content that you're creating. You're doing a huge amount of pretty much everything, I would say. Can you talk us through a little bit?
Well, basically, I want people to know first, before I get into what I do, you can never win. Because if you are pretending to be, and there are many pieces of advice people give, one of them is be very highbrow, be classy, be relatable, be vulgar, be this. And if you're being someone other than yourself, not only is it very difficult, but it doesn't work. And I have tried all those things. Like I have pretended to, over the years, and I would create an Instagram account for let's pretend to be wild, or let's pretend to be highbrow and very studious, or whatever it may be. It doesn't work. So I just kind of act like myself. And, I have pet pictures or things that I'm doing, or just in addition to work, I share whatever I naturally want to share. Or say like yesterday, a comic book about a snake getting together with another snake. It's not a comic book. It's a little joke. It's a meme. And I thought it was funny. So I put it online. It's not vulgar. It's not highbrow. It's kind of in the middle, very, I don't know what you would call it, everyday humor. So that's an example. I guess I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't want to be too vulgar, as is the direction many people go in to be relevant on social media. But I also don't want to be so highbrow, like some of these brands where they don't write back to people, where they only, they want people to think they sit around and, gold all day long and only wear diamonds to go take a bath. There are people like that, trust me. So, and they only eat on Rodeo Drive, and it's not the case with me. So, that's where I'm coming from. And my advice to people is don't fake anything, because you won't win. You will not become rich or successful pretending to be someone you are not, even though it's tempting because you see other people doing it. It's not going to work for you. But I just trying to get out there. I have a YouTube channel, which you think that being on Amazon Prime, you would get more attention. But actually on Amazon Prime, I don't find the right audience for some of the cartoons. For some of the interviews I've done that I post on there, I do. But for some of the cartoons, I attract I look up the people reviewing them. They're not my target audience. And then they write 1-star reviews like nobody. There was a person who wrote in America a 1-star review on a cartoon I did called Martians Take Belfast, which actually has real scenes filmed in Belfast mixed with a cartoon, kind of a comic strip looking cartoon. And the woman was, when I say not my target audience, I looked up the woman reviewing it. I don't know if it was IMDb or Amazon, one of those two. I think it's the same person. And she told, what is this? This is stupid, whatever. And then if you would only read the description, Martians Take Belfast, it's a retro cartoon about Martians landing in Belfast. Of course, it's going to be silly. It's animation. Of course, it's going to be silly. And then she wrote a review how upset she was that it was silly. It's ridiculous. So on YouTube, I find the right audience. So that's a good thing. And more of an audience.
I was just going to ask, because it's quite interesting, because it's a short film. I've got your YouTube channel up as well. It's a short film, so it's like under 12 minutes. So it's not like, it's something that she had to sit through or for 2.5 hours or anything else.
And she made fun of how it had retro clips of alien movies within it. And I was going to say, it's a whole little tribute to old science fiction movies made on a very low budget with some silly footage from Belfast, from actually going to a farm in Belfast and real animals. And also a friend of mine we mixed it so it looks like he's in Belfast, but he's actually on a farm in Springfield, Illinois, in America. And he plays this retro anchorman like a Ron Burgundy, and it's just silly. It's for, it's for young adults. It's not, I wouldn't say for children, but very super silly South Park. Not even, except that it doesn't curse or anything. It's just you know what you're in for when you're going to watch it. And on YouTube, people understand that. But on Amazon Prime, I run into problems like people who would rather watch a reality program about Katie Price or Real Housewives, and then instead they're watching my work and getting upset that it's not reality television about women yelling at people. I mean, of course not. It's not that. So that's one other thing. Sometimes my piece of advice could be find your audience, and you don't know you don't, all you know is you have not found your audience. That's all you know right now. But you have to keep trying until you do. At least some people who like your work. And that's for any business owner, not only with films. I mean, it could be, say that you have commercials about your business. If they aren't working, just find another means of promoting yourself, because you just have to try. And I do have a podcast. I have a personal one, and I have one I share with some other people that's more about acting tips, directing tips, things like that, called House of Film. I do have an Etsy store I share with them. Also, we have a fundraiser for women in film. I have an Apple News section that ties to my website blog. So I have some interviews with people on there, and it's interesting because, very much like YouTube versus Amazon Prime, prestige doesn't always win. So you would think with Google that I would get many hits on my website, and again, it's very unpredictable. But on on Apple, I do very well. And it's very unpredictable with the content that does well, but I always do well. And actually, I had my best year last year with the amount of readers landing on it. It's just one of those things that many people in any profession look at things like, is this going to give me branding and prestige and a name? And indeed it does. But it doesn't give you the audience or the numbers you want to see. So why do I care that, say, 50 people watch my cartoon on Amazon Prime and some of them don't like it because it's not a reality program, versus me getting thousands of people on YouTube or thousands of people in Apple News with an article? Like, say if 25,000 people read an article, for instance. There was an article I had that did really well with Randy Falk from NECA Toys, who does all the movie toys and action figures and everything. He's not Brad Pitt, but his article did really, really well. Like, I don't remember the exact number, like 15,000 or something. That many people read it on Apple News last year. That versus me just having a standalone website and say that 350 people, and I'm not even joking, Guillermo del Toro shared it online on his Twitter account, and something like 350, 400 people came in from the Twitter version, but people found it on their own without anybody sharing it on Apple News, like by the thousands. And that's something that people have to consider, prestige versus numbers. I don't know where to go from here. This is very conversational in this podcast, and I feel like I'm just...
No, it's good. I think, to be honest with you, again, it's giving people an insight into what actually happens and what really happens behind the scenes.
Right.
And funny enough, we were talking about this just before we went live and we started recording, but too many people are focused on the magic or the overnight success or the pretense of I've made it, or I suddenly made it, or whatever it is. But the reality is everything takes time. It takes effort. And again, it's about trial and error. You mentioned it earlier when you said, it's not just for videos or for what you're doing for films. It's for anything. It doesn't matter who you are and what you're trying to do. You're constantly trialing things with your marketing to see where your audience are, to see where you get the best fit, to see where you get the best results for what it is that you're trying to do. And that's something that a lot of people that we've come across as an agency don't do. We've had people tell us that video doesn't work for them. And we've said, well, what do you mean it doesn't doesn't work. And they said, well, we tried one and it never worked. We didn't get any sales from it. And you sit there going, so you tried one video that you posted on a social network and you didn't get a sale from it. So you decided that video doesn't work. I mean, the idea of that, or the concept of that, is absolutely mad. But actually, a lot of people aren't willing to put in the time and effort to try and find those things that do work and the things that don't. Invariably, they both come hand in hand. And I think that's something that's really important for anybody, regardless if it's personal, a corporate brand, or whether you're trying to sell a product, a film, or promote anything. Really.
Right. And there's so much tied up in fame that people think if they hire an influencer, an actress, whomever, and that's why I use the example of the super pleasant gentleman, and Mr. Del Toro and some other people who shared the article. And I can tell from, when they shared it and how many links came in and that sort of thing. There's so much value placed on that. And it's not always true to what you think. So very often somebody who is not a household name, not an Oscar winner, or if he or she is an Oscar winner, they're not famous to people who read the tabloids and things like that. Sometimes those people sharing things with and a perfect example. There is a filmmaker I interviewed recently who directs the spinoff from The Big Bang Theory, but he's not an Oscar winner. He's not like Steven Spielberg or anything. And he has so many people from his hometown in New Jersey who routinely come on my website and find it through Google. Like at least 1,500 people, I want to estimate, have found it just because of him being this hometown boy from New Jersey who did really well in Hollywood. And yeah, you can have an interview with a very famous person, or at least somebody who is an established person with the studios, and their interview doesn't do that well. That's very strange. And then people are publicists, marketers, brands, all these people have this mistaken belief that somebody is going to have more power if he or she is prominent. And sometimes you can have, as a fake example here, of course, even though I love the guy, say that Steven Spielberg has Amblin sharing a link. Do you see that sometimes Amblin has a video on YouTube and then it has 75 views? Okay. That doesn't guarantee that you share something and it's automatically popular, or it's going to be seen or noticed just because you give someone an item of clothing or you let somebody have an app download. It's very false. But on the flip side, that's a very important reason as to why people should want to be famous, because regardless of your industry, including if you just want to be a public speaker, or doctor, nurse talking about healthcare reform or whatever it may be, because people have this mistaken belief. If you are more famous, it doesn't matter what you do in your field. The more famous you are, the more people will respect you and will believe that you were able to turn out success from working with them, even if it's not true. I don't know where you want to go from here with that, but that's kind of a very complex topic.
I'm liking this episode already because you're challenging me now in terms of trying to make the conversation as interesting, stroke as different as possible. But I think I'll pull you up on a couple of things that you mentioned there, and I do agree with you completely. And for me, it's this mistaken concept between vanity metrics, i.e., influencer X has 2 million followers, versus what actual influence does that person have with those 2 million followers. So what you were saying earlier about, New Jersey boy does good, and the local town, the local community buying into that and actually wanting to understand more about him and know about him and follow him and whatever else, that to me is a huge sphere of influence that's created by that person compared to, influencer X who has 2 million people. And when she decides she wants to launch her own clothing line or whatever it is, she can't sell 43 units, which that actually is a real story that happened last year. And I think that's something that a lot of people get mistaken. And I think what you mentioned, and you sort of took it onto that afterwards, which is this idea of being famous. So we refer to it probably more as, thought leadership within your industry or within your field. But actually having a sphere of influence whereby you are a thought leader and you're respected within your community, within your industry, within your field, if you can target and access, even if it's a really super specific niche, But even if there's only 10,000 people and 3,000 of them follow you because they want to hear what your version of it is or what your opinion is on X or Y, that to me is worth more than having, like you mentioned, like the Amblin, for example, having millions of subscribers on their YouTube channel, but some videos that they post or share will get a lot less than somebody who's really got that sphere of influence kind of nailed and has that audience who are super engaged with them and that wants to see what they're posting and what they're sharing and why. And I think that's kind of the relationship that you build up with your followers, the relationship that you build up with that kind of, with that ecosystem that you build around yourself. And it's something that a lot of people mistake. They think numbers equate to success. Whereas quite often, like you've mentioned there, you know, the numbers will tell you where people are watching, what they're looking at or what they're kind of doing. But it doesn't necessarily mean because you've got 1 million followers that that's 1 million people who are actually looking, watching, involved, and that want to continue being involved.
Yeah. And there's also a gentleman who, like I said, doesn't have very many followers for his business and where he works. And he also is not, on his Facebook page. He doesn't have a public Facebook or anything, but he shared it. He's an Oscar nominee from the special effects industry from the same world. And it also posted an article from my website where he was not in it, but, it was about Mr. Del Toro's toys with the NECA toys thing, Randy Fox article. And his thing that he was posting on Facebook, I saw a bunch of return from him, just from him sharing it within his special effects community of friends on Facebook, on his private Facebook account. So that goes to show you that very often people who are not in the public eye are the most effective at promoting something. And with me, I'm just, like I told you before we went on the air, I tell people everything. Okay, so my problem is right now, and I don't have a lot of problems, but this is one area that I don't know what to do. I constantly compete with people who and I don't hate Kim Kardashian. I want to specify that, but there are many people who have plastic surgery to look like Kim Kardashian, and they are influencers, and they carve up their faces not to look like a prettier version of themselves, but like Kim Kardashian. And you've seen it. And when it's not that, there are, in the UK, they call them mummy. In the US, they call them mommy, but mommy bloggers, people like that. And again, I don't hate them, but there are certain boxes you have to check to be an influencer or a paid spokesperson, whatever you want to call it, on social media. And I have gone to companies and brands and asked them, because I've done modeling before a long time ago at a professional level, in Manhattan, can I work with you for these, whatever they are, like the makeup collection or eyeshadow palette or whatever it may be? And I'm not even saying my rates or anything. I'm just saying, and I've said, like, I've had people want to buy some things that they have seen me with online, but the note that I consistently get back is usually some very corporate jargon, fake note about how I don't fit the image of what they're going for. And I was about to say, what is the image you're going for? And I look at their brands, and there are all these people, and this is not from a place of hate. It's just, why do you have to have one look? Who have plastic surgery to rebuild themselves to look like Kardashians, and very often have tattoos or have a rough around the edges look to them. And that's not me. And I'm sorry that that's not me, but I don't understand it. And it doesn't matter that I've been able to convert. That's one reason I'm so afraid, unless I really, really like something. And even then, I'm so afraid to mention brands that I like online, because people buy them and people tell me they like them. But the brands that don't thank me, the other day, there was a film director I was talking to. It's a guy, and he was telling me, like, for the amount of publicity you give these brands over the years, they should have at least sent you a free gift of makeup or a free whatever it may be, and different things, like, because I've gotten like little DMs or notes from people saying that they want to have bought something after I bought it. And that's one reason I don't know what to think of this state of mind people have about influencers, because it's like you have to fit a look, and I'm not any particular look. I just look like a normal, healthy young lady who doesn't starve or overeat or whatever, and works out enough. But I would have fit in 1950s Hollywood, but I don't fit in now. And it's like, so because I don't fit a look that you were seeking, that I'm an ineffective spokesperson. Is that what you're trying to say? And it's just so offensive. I don't know when this will stop, but I have definitely stopped promoting brands, if you know what I mean. I've even deleted old posts. Okay.
I think it's a challenge though, and I think even for brands themselves, the ones that we've spoken to, influencers kind of shot to fame, and it was very hard for the brands to kind of keep up. And what's ended up happening invariably is that, a lot of these people, and again, you have huge following or whatever it might be, that doesn't make you effective in terms of converting people, in terms of sales, in terms of marketing that particular product in a particular way. And I think that there's a huge space that's kind of developed around that for more of a niche kind of element. And I think that's where brands are, again, very similar to what we talked about earlier. It's not because somebody has the biggest following. It's not because Kim Kardashian has millions of people following her because of whatever it is that she's up to, or because they think this is the glamorous lifestyle that they want to live, or whatever it might be. But actually, again, having 10,000 followers that actually give a shit about what you do versus having 2 million that maybe just kind of like window shopping, or that just kind of want to see what you're up to nowadays, or because you post great travel pics or whatever else. Those things don't necessarily make you a good influencer. And I think with a lot of the brands, they're still struggling, to be honest, to kind of make this work for them in the right way. And I'm not saying there haven't been great and hugely successful campaigns with influencers, but there's become this mad rush for people. And, even if you talk to youngsters nowadays, they'll tell you they want to be YouTubers, for example, something that, it's not necessarily a full-time.
If I may ask you this, what is the value in, an example I can give to you, just because, and I don't personally work with Louis Vuitton, but I know somebody who told me about Louis Vuitton giving up product to influencers, and I don't quite understand, because Louis Vuitton is so famous and so iconic to people that there's no need to give anything free to influencers. Maybe possibly to an actress at the Oscars carrying a little handbag, perhaps. But other than that, there's no need. And brands left and right are blowing money in product on influencers and actresses nobody has ever heard of. It's really strange, and I don't quite get it. What is the value in that?
I think that's probably a deeper question, but Louis Vuitton being part of the LVMH group, which is huge, but they have probably the most successful rosé wine now from the south of France, which has made it across the globe everywhere. I think it's called M de Minuti. And literally it's not necessarily the best wine. It's not something that local people would drink if they were from the area, which I happen to know quite well because my dad's from that area originally. And they're all about this ultra luxury lifestyle. So if they can put something that feels like it's just out of your reach, so whether it be that guy on the YouTube video influencer, for example, who's driving around in what is probably a rented Lamborghini and has an LV bag next to him, people seem to think that correlates to any kind of real world satisfaction or reality, which invariably, it works. Like that's why these people get watched so much. It's why people, follow these accounts and stuff like that. It doesn't necessarily make it real, or, for anybody who's got any kind of sense, I think they can distinguish between those things. But also, again, it's targeting a really specific niche, which is a bunch of people who are at the point in their lives where they honestly believe that buying a $3,000 bag when they can't afford to put money into savings or whatever else is going to impact their lives and impact their happiness. And that, I think, is a challenge in itself, and probably a much deeper conversation, and not something really that we've talked about much on this podcast.
I'll leave it for another day.
But I think that's very much the issue. And, there's a lot of people out there that are gunning for that want to be able to say they bought a $5,000 or a $10,000 handbag or whatever it might be. So there's a place in the market for it. And again, for a group that size, it's nothing. It's peanuts giving away multiple pieces of clothing or items or bags or whatever else, in the grand scheme of things, if it helps to keep that dream alive that LV is, the ultimate in luxury, and it's part of this lifestyle that's just out of your reach, I think.
Oh, It's sad, but you know what I mean? It's very, very sad.
Well, it is, but unfortunately, that there are people out there that are materialistic, and there are people out there that for them that is more important. What you drive and comparing your car to your next door neighbor's is more important than what you've got inside your cupboards or inside your fridge to be able to eat at night. So everyone, horses for courses, and everyone's different. So I think it's always a challenge, but I think what's very interesting though, and in terms of that, as part of what you're doing, obviously you've got a career, you're making these shorts, you're making films, you're doing animation, you're creating film scores as well, which is another channel that you're using, which I believe is on Spotify. You've got your film scores on there as well. You're creating a huge amount on a regular basis. This is big. So not just to mention sort of your social media and keeping that alive, but you're actually creating massive amounts of content. How do you fit all that in? How do you manage to do all these things?
Oh, I only do one thing at a time. So just for the sake of two reasons. One, mental well-being, and number two, just the way my mind works. It's very difficult to focus on music and then flip over to animation in the same day. You just can't. So I really like what I'm doing right now that I'm going to put out. Hopefully it will be available in a month at the latest, is the album for the main music from Esther in Wonderland, which is the first animated feature I'm going to put up on YouTube. And it's going to be, it's basically Peer Gynt, but it's mixed, and I rewrote Peer Gynt, and it's my music mixed with the old. So I'm putting that together, but I'm not touching the animation or drawing or anything right now. And I think usually people have an impression that people do everything in the same day, and that's not the case. So you just focus on one thing and then go from there. Otherwise, you will go crazy and do a terrible job and everything. It's just my mind.
No, it's okay. I agree completely. I try to focus on just one thing at the same time, at any time, because otherwise you end up doing two things badly as opposed to one thing well. And in terms of, all of these different platforms, what have been the driving forces for you in terms of actually, getting out there and making sure that you just keep going onto all these different platforms? Because I found you online, everything from the usual kind of social media, Instagram, Twitter, and stuff like that. But, you're on Apple News, you're on Spotify for the music stuff, you're on YouTube for the video stuff. You're constantly trying all these things. And is that basically to try and figure out what works best, or is it part of sort of a bigger plan for you? Or
well, to understand this, you have to understand that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, which is I said to be a roll-up of Peter Jackson and Hans Zimmer. And that's not only because they excel in their fields, it's because they're my two favorite Hollywood businessmen. Steven Spielberg and other people are also, like you could count James Cameron and all them, but those are my two favorites, those two. And that is because they do what they do very well, but they also bring what they do to the attention of people who don't typically follow that. So everybody knows the special effects from Lord of the Rings. But what they don't always realize is that Peter Jackson created many, many jobs for people in New Zealand from those movies. He has lots where people film movies he doesn't direct or produce, but he owns. And there are many businesses around his revitalization of the film industry in New Zealand. People from Hollywood go down in there to film movies. There was a Will Smith movie that his company did the effects for. So many things. He's not just the guy from Lord of the Rings. And he really is super involved. Hans Zimmer, same thing. Hans Zimmer has a while back, he had an app. He has concerts for film score music. He invented that practically. He has so much going on for him that it's not just him sitting composing music for the film screen and nobody knows who he is. He had the first music video on MTV. People don't connect when they see those things. They just think Hans Zimmer showed up out of nowhere. And indeed, he had Video Killed the Radio Star. That was his song in his music video. So it's not something that people realize, but once they start connecting it, you can see the little ways as people are so heavily involved in the actual business of show business. So that's the actual reason I do everything. And I would hope to extend that the moment I'm a big studio director, and, you know, hopefully with an Oscar would be nice. But you know what I mean? It's not just, oh, hey, I want to do this. And what I always tell people is, well, there are several things I tell people, but someday I will be an Oscar winner for Best Director and a Best Original Score, but it's not because I did what other people did. It's going to be because it's like winning the lottery. You're sacrificing everything that many men, and I say men because stereotypes are true. Most women live up to stereotypes, and it's not nice of me to say that, but there are many women who just want to have kids and want to do whatever, and I don't care about that. And there are many women who want to have certain lifestyles, or they just want to coast along sometimes and work less and be more family oriented or care about small things in life. That's great. And I'm not hating on those people, but I'm not one of them. And also men included, I will say, because we often make it look like only women want that. That's not true. Men, I've met plenty of men who say they only want to spend time thinking about having children or having, you know, family life at home with the wife or whatever it may be. And you can be married and be, you know, like James Cameron, totally. But it's a different thing, you know, like, I don't necessarily care about some of the smaller things in life that men care about, and some women. And I hope I don't sound mean in saying that, because I stand behind what I say, but you know, it's true. Like, women live up to stereotypes, and men we don't talk about also live up to the female stereotype. So it's both genders. But you know, if you look at, you know, Hans Zimmer, he's just alone in a dark room when he could be walking at the beach or whatever. He's alone in a dark room writing music. He's working nonstop. He's like a workaholic, and he's been like that forever. And other people, don't tell me that James Cameron was not out, you know, thinking about things a mile a minute when he, instead of reading a book. Okay. Those are the things that I'm talking about. That instead of you sitting with a book in the morning, you're plotting out, and very often with grand failure. Okay. Many things fail, but you just try everything. So it's kind of, I guess my voice cracked there for a minute, because I'm like, how do I say this? It's from me wanting to be like those men. I mean, like I said, I mentioned those are my two favorites, but there are other businessmen. You can count Steven Spielberg, mentioned James Cameron, you know, Jerry Bruckheimer, different people who are business people first, and they just kind of obsess over things because they're dissatisfied with just being, you know, and I don't want to make fun of people, but, you know, like a Greta Gerwig, you know, or I'm trying to think of a male equivalent to her without offending anybody. Darren Aronofsky. Okay, he's a good example. And I don't think I'm being offensive when I say that, you know, there's a huge difference between Darren Aronofsky, Greta Gerwig's husband, to a James Cameron. And there's just, what do you want to sacrifice in life? You know, there's no other way around it. And people think it's crazy, but
well, I don't think it's crazy. I think there's an element there clearly of passion and desire in terms of what it is that you're trying to achieve. And I think that the reality is, and I think it was Thomas Edison, the quote, which was, you know, opportunities are missed because they're often disguised as hard work. And people don't realize that. But, you know, the big successes, and we talked about this again earlier on, but even the overnight successes, people seem to ignore the years and years and years of hard work that go into that beforehand.
I've met people who are like, you know, they made a movie in 1990, whatever, 1980, whatever, and they're happy and they live off it, and fans come up to them for, you know, whatever movie, and they're just thrilled. Or, you know, they write them online like, oh, you made my favorite movie, and they never directed anything or started anything relevant since then, and good for them. I mean, they're happy. And this is something that my mom and other people, including directors and people, try to tell me is, I suspect I have like James Cameron disease, totally, because they tell me like, Miss Russin-McFarland, you need to understand, not everyone likes what you like. Many people are happy if they have just a little bit of success and they have 3 children and they do this, and you have to understand they're going to be happy. And I'm like, why aren't they doing this? And I'm always, that's not what I'd say literally out loud, but my internal when I don't know if you see things like some of these interviews with people that are in the press, like the New York Times or Elle magazine or whatever it may be, British, American, whatever. And they're all like, I'm just so happy doing this. And I have a flower garden and I take care of the garden and I cook with the kids. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why do you want that? Why do you want that? There's no! Like that. And that's my internal. But I'm being goofy. That's like one of my other quirks, but yeah.
Well, to be honest, I think it's perfect because, again, if everyone was exactly like you, then it would be a hell of a lot harder for anybody to actually make it and to be able to sacrifice those things to get to where they want to be. So
I don't care about vacations. I don't care about anything. I'm like, this is my happiness. I don't know. I mean, and it's not to say you can't have a flower garden or grow onions or something. I have actually tried growing herbs and fun things, but it's not like I center my life around like I'm going to sit here for 6 hours and watch my herbs grow every morning. No, I'm not. It's that kind of, I don't know. I think you have to be like a little neurotic. That's the way to say it. Yeah. And if you're not,
I think there's probably definitely a correlation between that kind of mentality and success. So why not keep it up and keep going towards what you want to do? So I think that's perfect. Nicole, this has been awesome. I think we're going to wrap up, but before I do, what's your one favorite channel online and why?
On YouTube?
No. Just in general for yourself in terms of what you use. What's your favorite digital channel?
Well, I mean, probably Twitter because people may pay more attention to what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Sometimes I get the strangest things on Instagram or people or any platform. They just get strange things that I know people will not tell someone John Williams. You know what I mean? Yep. And they're not really sexist either, just odd. And on Twitter, I get a lot less of that. On occasion, I get people cursing at me for food pictures, but I block them. And most of the time, people focus on what I'm saying or what the picture is, the image, which on other platforms, people do, but there's always someone who's missing. You say that you're posing, this is not the case, but say that you're posing with a dinosaur lunchbox with Jurassic Park or something, and they're like, your waist is this or whatever, and then you're like, what do you tell Hans Zimmer on his Instagram about his waist? No, and then you have a choice if you want to delete the comment or block it or whatever it may be. That's one reason. It's just very strange towards female users, and that's another topic in itself. And I'm not a Me Too activist or anything, but that's just a fact of life. And I think on Twitter it's a little more equal. It draws a different audience.
I think there's a slightly higher level of discourse and conversation that's still happening on Twitter. I'm not saying that there aren't trolls and it isn't brutal on some occasions, but I do find myself spending more time on Twitter than on Instagram these days as well. So, but then again, no one has ever commented on my eyebrows or my waist unless it's to tell me that it's too big.
People, I don't know. I mean, but that's not to say bad people are on Instagram. Every platform is wonderful, fun. It's just that some of it's strange. And it's laughable when we look back on that right now. So it's not bad.
Well, Nicole, this has definitely been the strangest, but also remarkably enjoyable podcast that I've done as part of the All About Digital Marketing show. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to make sure that everyone has your links and can connect with you as well on the show notes. But just very quickly, would you say Twitter's the best place to get in touch with you or to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, for now, it's excellent. I use everything though, but Twitter, I just check it all the time.
And you can also find Nicole's shorts on Amazon. And if you don't like it, then you feel free to leave a comment on there just to let her know, because she doesn't like that. Nicole, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
The All About Digital Marketing podcast is brought to you by Social Inc., a distributed digital marketing agency specialized in delivering results through online campaigns. Whether it's content marketing, social media marketing, online advertising, or web design, we've got you covered, from strategy through to delivery. If you're struggling with your digital marketing, get in touch today by simply visiting www.socialinc.co.